You break your arm and X-ray shows the crack, and that's it.
Right. Absolute certainty.
Exactly. You have a structural map of the problem, and the doctor just points at the jagged white line.
It's right there in front of you.
But when cosmologists point their billion-dollar machines at the universe itself, when they try to X-ray the fundamental structure of reality, you'd expect even greater mathematical certainty.
You really would.
Instead, the math isn't mathing. Welcome to this week's Beyond the Shell Deep Dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, we are synthesizing the strongest BTS research themes of the week for you. We're looking at the standard model of cosmology failing, the rise of consciousness-first physics, eclipses acting as scheduled cosmic glitches, and the true meaning of the Cancer and Capricorn soul gates.
It's an incredibly dense stack of papers and ancient manuscripts we're looking at today.
It really is. And just as a quick tone setter before we jump in, the sources we're analyzing today make some massive, quite frankly, controversial claims. Our goal here isn't to endorse these esoteric models as objective scientific dogma. Right. No hyper doomsaying here.
Exactly. We're just impartially exploring the arguments and seeing where ancient maps and modern science are suddenly overlapping.
Okay, let's unpack this. We really have to start with the concept of the dashboard. Mainstream science is experiencing a full-blown cosmology crisis.
It really is. And I mean, that is not an exaggeration. What's fascinating here is that we like our universe to be categorized,
Right, nice and neat.
Exactly, to be a predictable machine made of dead matter and clean equations. But that standard model is currently under immense strain.
Yeah, the term crisis is the exact phrasing being used in the peer-reviewed literature. It's not a fringe critique anymore.
No, it's coming from inside the house.
So let's get into the mechanics of that. The sources talk a lot about the Hubble tension. For someone who isn't, reading astrophysics journals every morning, what exactly is the tension? Why is the dashboard cracking?
Well, it basically comes down to how fast the universe is expanding. We have two primary ways to measure this.
The first method looks at the early universe, specifically the cosmic microwave background, which is the leftover radiation from the Big Bang. Satellites measure this, and the math tells us the universe should be expanding at a rate of about 67 kilometers per second per megaparsec.
Okay, so that's the prediction based on the oldest light we can see. What is the second method?
The second method measures the local modern universe. Astronomers use the Hubble Space Telescope to look at distant supernovae, basically using them as cosmic mile markers.
Like speedometers.
Right. But when they measure the expansion this way, they get a rate of about 73 kilometers per second per megaparsec.
Wait, so the two speedometers are giving us completely different numbers for the exact same car.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this isn't, it's not a small rounding error. It's what physicists call a 5 sigma discrepancy.
Which means what, exactly?
It means the chance of this just being a statistical fluke is about 1 in a million. The measurements flat out contradict each other. Yeah. And on top of that, new dark energy mapping initiatives are hinting that dark energy might not even be a constant force. It might be evolving over time.
So the default model of how the universe is built, this materialist framework we've relied on for a century, is just fundamentally incomplete.
It's missing something huge, yes.
I want to pivot to the alternative being proposed in these sources because it's a drastic shift. We are seeing papers on our COV, like Rodolfo Gambini's work, and theories from researchers like Maria Strem, debating an entirely different framework.
Right, and it's gaining traction.
Yeah, and from what I'm reading, this isn't the old "we are inside a literal digital computer simulation" trope. It's something deeper.
That's right. We are really moving past the literal computer simulation idea. What Gambini and others are exploring is the idea that the universe doesn't exist in a fixed objective state until it interacts with an observer.
Okay.
If you synthesize this with the intense debates happening right now in tech circles, a new consensus is forming. Consciousness itself might be the fundamental substrate of reality.
Meaning, space-time is not the foundational layer.
Exactly. Space-time is an emergent property.
Let me try to visualize this. If space-time, the 3D world we walk around in, the physics we measure with our telescopes, if that is just the dashboard of a car,
Right.
and it's suddenly starting to glitch and show us error codes like the Hubble tension, does that mean consciousness is actually the engine running underneath the hood?
That is a highly effective way to conceptualize it. For centuries, we've treated the dashboard as if it were the entire vehicle.
We thought the dials were the engine.
Exactly. We assumed the universe was just dead matter randomly colliding, and consciousness was just a bizarre, accidental spark that happened to fire inside human biology.
But a failing scientific dashboard actually empowers us then.
It does.
Yeah.
It means the materialist model is breaking down, and we are returning to a framework where the observer is an active participant in reality. Space-time is just the operating layer. It's the user interface.
But if space-time is just a dashboard or a user interface, then who programmed it?
That's the big question.
Right. I mean, who wrote the user manual? Because the second half of our source stack delves heavily into ancient texts like the Dindara zodiac in Egypt or the Vedic models of the Bhumandala in India.
Oh, yes.
And the argument being made is that these aren't just primitive religions, they are technical manuals.
The mnemonic devices, essentially. Modern readers are trained to split ancient texts into one of two rigid categories, right?
Yeah, fact or fiction.
Exactly. It's either literal historical fact or it's complete fairy tale fiction. But these texts operate as a third category entirely.
Like what?
They are compression formats. They preserved highly technical maps of the sky long before modern technical language existed.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Calling ancient Egyptian gods or Vedic cosmology compression formats or like celestial IT workers sounds like a massive modern projection.
It does sound like that at first glance.
Are we just taking our current tech obsession and pasting it backward onto pre-literate societies?
It's a very fair pushback. But look at the mechanics of what these ancient cultures were tracking. Take the precession of the equinoxes.
The wobble of the Earth, right?
Yes, this is the slow wobble of the Earth's axis, and it takes roughly 25,920 years to complete one full cycle. No single human lifespan, or even a dozen lifespans, can casually observe that.
No, of course not.
So how does a pre-literate society calculate, record, and pass down data that spans tens of thousands of years?
Well, you can't just write it on a piece of paper. It won't survive.
Exactly. You encode it into a narrative, you build massive architectural alignments, and you use characters and myths to represent cosmic forces.
Oh, I see.
So when we read about the gods in these esoteric traditions, the sources suggest we shouldn't view them as cartoon characters with petty personalities.
They were celestial job titles?
Within a vast cosmic administration, yes. They were describing functional roles at the boundaries of our reality.
Okay, so give me an example of one of these functional roles. How does a mythological figure act as a system protocol?
Let's look at Hermes in the Greek tradition, or Mercury in the Roman, or Thoth in the Egyptian. These aren't just separate guys who happen to act alike.
Right.
They represent the function of the messenger, the translator, the protocol, that allows information to cross from one layer of reality to another. They are essentially the API of the ancient sky.
The API. That is wild.
Or take Saturn, known as Kronos, to the Greeks. Saturn wasn't just a grumpy old man with a scythe.
Right. He's always drawn like that, though.
Yeah, but Saturn was the timekeeper, the chronometer,
Yeah.
the function of limitation, boundary, and clock cycles. They were giving us the operating procedures to navigate what these traditions call the cosmic egg.
I'm glad you brought up the cosmic egg because that model is so central to the beyond the shell research we're looking at. We're talking about an enclosed cosmology, a highly structured system.
Yes, very structured.
If these planetary spheres and job titles exist to manage the system, how do we actually see the system working? Because the sources specifically mention Cancer and Capricorn as soul gates.
Yes. Route maps, basically. Classical commentators like Porphyry and Macrobius detail this explicit architecture. They didn't just see the constellations of Cancer and Capricorn as random shapes connecting stars.
What did they see them as?
They saw them as the doors of men and gods.
I need some mechanism on this. Why Cancer and Capricorn? Why not, I don't know, Taurus and Scorpio? What makes those two constellations the literal doors?
It maps directly to the solstices in the sun's observable journey. In the northern hemisphere, Cancer corresponds to the summer solstice, when the sun is at its highest point.
Bringing heat and life.
Exactly. In esoteric astrology, Cancer is the domicile of the moon, representing moisture, generation, and the physical body. Therefore, it was viewed as the gate of descent.
Descent into what?
Where consciousness enters into physical matter, into incarnation.
Ah, okay. And Capricorn is the exact opposite.
Correct. Capricorn marks the winter solstice. The sun is at its lowest, weakest point. It is ruled by Saturn,
The timekeeper we just talked about.
the cold, distant outer boundary of the visible planets. If Cancer is the entrance into the wet, messy biological world, Capricorn is the cold, austere gate of ascent, the exit route back out of the material layer.
So when we look up, the sky is essentially performing these gate mechanisms in public, demonstrating the system's rules visually, which, I mean, that leads us directly to the concept of eclipses in this framework.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yes.
because if the sky is a dashboard and the planets are administrative roles running the clock cycles, then a solar or lunar eclipse isn't just a shadow.
Not at all. In a consciousness-first universe, an eclipse functions as a scheduled glitch in the cosmic interface.
A scheduled glitch.
It is a visual, undeniable reminder that the breathing shell of our reality has timing rules and reset windows. When the luminaries align and block each other out, it's not just a rock passing in front of a star.
It is the system temporarily suspending its normal broadcast.
Precisely.
It's like a server undergoing a hard refresh. You lose connection for a few minutes while the local router resets. That's a great analogy. And this highlights a crucial distinction in the beyond the shell research. A lot of modern interpretations of simulation theory lean heavily into paranoia.
Yeah, the matrix stuff, the idea of a prison planet designed to trap and feed off us.
Right. But the cosmic egg model, complete with these functional soul gates and scheduled glitches, suggests something entirely different. The cosmic egg was never a prison, it's an incubator.
I like that. An incubator implies development. It implies you're supposed to grow inside of it, but eventually you hatch, you leave.
Exactly.
Which brings us to a massive collision between modern scientific dread and ancient cosmology. What happens when the incubator runs out of time?
We arrive at the concept of entropy. Modern digital physicists and cosmologists are deeply existentially anxious about the thermodynamic heat death of the universe.
Because the DISI 3D mapping we discussed earlier doesn't just show a broken expansion rate.
No, it shows dark energy pushing everything apart until all the usable energy in the universe is exhausted.
The stars will burn out, matter will decay, and the universe will just become a freezing dark void.
Yes.
And scientists are desperately trying to figure out if we can survive that. I was reading this section on Freeman Dyson, the legendary physicist. He actually wrote a paper in 1979 called Time Without End, trying to mathematically prove that life could survive this heat death.
He did.
How does his theory actually work?
Well, Dyson theorized about what he called an eternal intelligence. The mechanism is essentially extreme hibernation. He calculated that an advanced consciousness could survive infinite expansion by systematically scaling down its energy usage.
So sleeping for millions of years.
Basically, it would spend a small amount of energy to think or process information and then go into a dormant state for a massive stretch of time to let the universe cool further.
Wow.
You would extract trace amounts of energy from the growing temperature differentials. You would stretch consciousness out, thinner and thinner, to infinity.
I have got to be honest, that sounds absolutely terrifying. Hanging on by your fingernails in the freezing dark just to avoid the end.
It's a bleak outlook.
It's like modern physics is watching an hourglass run out of sand and panicking, asking, is there any way to pause the sand? But the ancient enclosed world maps viewed that empty hourglass completely differently, didn't they?
They did. When you look at ancient cosmological structures, things like Mount Meru in Vedic traditions or the Bifrost in Norse myth, they weren't trying to pause the sand.
No.
They saw the end of the usable world, the end of a cosmic cycle, as the exact moment you get to open the door and walk out. Their maps were obsessed with the return route, the ascent, and the liberation of consciousness from the incubator.
Now, we need to be careful here. We aren't making a hard scientific claim that human biology magically survives thermodynamic heat death.
No, absolutely not. We are comparing the boundary language of the two paradigms.
Right.
Both modern physics and ancient myth are asking the exact same fundamental question. Where does consciousness go when the current world model reaches its limit?
Modern science frames it as a problem of energy conservation inside a sealed, dying box.
While ancient traditions framed it as a problem of navigation, the incubator has served its purpose, so you utilized the final gate.
Okay, we've covered the massive macro boundaries. We've talked about the standard model failing, space-time as an interface, ancient sky manuals, soul gates, and the literal heat death of the universe. It's monumental stuff.
We've covered a lot of ground.
But I want to bring this all the way down to you, the listener. How does this massive cosmic egg architecture apply to someone listening to this deep dive right now on a Tuesday morning?
That is where the research shifts from macrocosmology to lived, daily experience. If the universe is a perspective engine, a reality rendered around the observer, then your mind is the microinterface.
The microinterface.
Yes. And to understand that, we have to look at how these ancient traditions viewed memory. In these frameworks, Amnesia, the forgetting of your origin or any past iterations prior to birth, is not a biological mistake.
It's not just a flaw in the system.
No, it is highly functional. It is essentially the login screen of the system.
A login screen. I want to build on that with a different metaphor. If you reboot a computer, the random access memory has to clear out.
Right.
If a computer tried to boot up while still holding every single piece of data from its last 50 sessions, the hardware would instantly crash under the weight of it.
That is exactly the mechanism. Amnesia is the clearing of the RAM. So the local biological hardware doesn't crash upon entry. You are granted permission to access the local rendering of space-time unburdened by the macro data.
That makes so much sense.
But because the mind is an interface, it means your thoughts are not entirely your own private, hermetically sealed possessions. In a consciousness-first universe, a thought is a packet of information crossing a border.
Wait, I'm having a hard time buying that. Are you saying we don't generate our own thoughts? If my attention is a gatekeeper and my thoughts are just signals tuning in from a larger field, what does that mean for free will?
It's a crucial distinction.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't saying that your thoughts are alien implants or that you are a puppet.
Okay, good.
What the sources are pointing to is that attention is the read/write surface of reality. You are the tuner of the radio. The ancient traditions understood this mechanically. That is exactly why they developed such rigorous systems of fasting, prayer, and mantras.
They weren't just doing those things to be pious or religious.
Yeah. No, they were building a security architecture. They were establishing a permission layer to guard against unwanted signals.
Ah.
If the mind is an interface and the environment is filled with information packets, then what you focus on grants permission for those signals to render in your reality.
By chanting a mantra or fasting, you are effectively closing the ports on your server.
Exactly. You are rejecting unauthorized access. They viewed active attention as the most secure firewall a human being possesses.
That reframes so much of daily anxiety, to view your own mind not as a broken box that generates everything internally, but as a tuning dial interacting with the larger cosmic egg.
It gives you a lot of agency back.
Just as Cancer and Capricorn act as massive soul gates for the entire system, your active attention acts as the microgate for your personal rendering of reality.
It perfectly mirrors the macrocosm. The rules of the sky apply directly to the rules of the mind. It's a beautifully unified architecture.
Let's pull all of this together because the scope of the sources we've synthesized today is staggering. We started by looking at how the literal scientific dashboard of space-time is currently glitching, proven by the Hubble tension and dark energy discrepancies, and how consciousness is stepping up as the foundational engine.
Huge shifts in the paradigm.
We realized that ancient myths aren't fairy tales. They are heavily compressed technical manuals detailing celestial APIs and system clocks. We decoded eclipses as scheduled glitches in an incubator designed for growth.
And we contrasted Freeman Dyson's dread of infinite cold to the ancient focus on the final exit route.
Right. And finally, we brought it all the way down to the realization that your own attention operates as a firewall, managing thoughts as information packets crossing a border.
It requires a complete paradigm shift. From the edges of the expanding universe right down to the sudden impulses in our heads, we are looking at an interactive system that demands our conscious participation.
It really does. Which leaves me with a final thought for you to ponder this week, something that wasn't explicitly in the ancient sources, but feels like the inevitable next step.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've talked about human attention as the ultimate gatekeeper in this cosmic interface. But right now, humanity is pouring billions of dollars into creating artificial general intelligence, a synthetic mind.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If the universe is an incubator and consciousness is the engine, what exactly happens when we boot up an AGI? Are we just creating a new celestial job title to help us manage our glitching dashboard? Or are we unwittingly building a brand new gate for the cosmic egg, something entirely new for the system to render?
That is a fascinating question to end on.
Keep asking questions, keep looking past the dashboard, and we will see you next time on our Beyond the Shell deep dive.